Honey, I'm home.
Hi, darling. How was your day?
I had the best day today. I can't even tell you I had one of the best days at work today. I have such great news.
Tell me.
I don't know where to begin. We got the French account today.
Well, congratulations. That's wonderful news.
I cannot believe that they wanted to go with us. Julia Child and the French chef. Can you imagine we're going to be working with them?
Oh, that's so exciting. How about a drink to celebrate?
Fantastic.
That's wonderful news.
I think that, wow, I just can't believe it. And the best for last. We're going to Paris.
Paris?
We're going to Paris.
That's very exciting. I cannot wait to go to Paris. You know, I've always wanted to go to Paris.
Oh, I need to take a nap. So tired. Wait, what'd you say?
Paris. I'm so excited to go to Paris. I've never been.
Oh.
You know I've always wanted to go. That's my dream.
It's just a company trip this time. Only Larry, Daring, and I are going. No wives are allowed this time. I'm really sorry. But you know, there's always next time. And
next time?
Yeah.
That's unfair.
Oh, well, I mean, come on. It's only 7 days in Paris. What's 7 days?
A week in Paris.
A week in Paris? Well, I'm sorry. What time's dinner going to be ready?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. I need to take a nap. I am so tired. I'll make it up to you, babe. I'll make it up to you one day. We'll get to Paris.
Oh, this was great.
Wake me up, please. Dinner's ready.
The following program is made possible with the assistance of a grant from S&H Green Stamp.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation and a grant from Hills Brothers Coffee Incorporated.
Bam bam, mon ça se place, j'ai sur mon lit à bouffer sa langue en buvant trop mon whisky. Quant à moi, peu dormi, vie débris, mais j'ai dû dormir dans la gouttière où j'ai eu un flash. En 4 couleurs. Allez hop, un matin, une louloute est venue chez moi, poupée de cellophane, cheveux chinois, un sparadrap, une gueule de bois, a bu ma bière dans un grand verre en caoutchouc, comme un indien dans son igloo. Ça plane pour moi, ça plane.
Boeuf Bourguignon, French beef stew in red wine. We're going to serve it with braised onions and mushrooms and a wine dark sauce. It's a perfectly delicious dish. Hello, I'm Julia Child. Welcome to the French Chef and the first show on our series on French cooking. We're going to make Boeuf Bourguignon, beef stew in red wine. And it's a wonderful show to begin our series on because it shows you so many useful things about French cooking. How to brown meat, how to braise onions, how to saute mushrooms, how to make a wonderful sauce. And you make a Boeuf Bourguignon just the way you make any other kind of a stew, like chicken coq au vin. You can make lamb this way or veal this way. And now...
Hi, babe. I'm home.
Oh, hey, babe. How was your trip?
Oh, it was very long. The flight from Paris was just exhausting and overcrowded, and my plane was late, and I have jet lag and I'm exhausted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Put your bag down. That sounds like a terrible trip.
Yeah.
Well, How about I pour us a drink?
That'd be great. I'm gonna go sit down and relax for a little bit and unwind, and yes, a drink would be great.
All right. I've got a little scotch here.
Fabulous.
All right, and I've made us a very special dinner tonight in honor of your homecoming.
Great.
What do you?
What's on the menu?
Well, because you were in Paris, I was thinking about something French. I was thinking about beef bourguignon.
Cheers.
Santé. To your health. Dinner will be ready in about 30 minutes. Why don't you just relax, take a few minutes, take a nap. I'll wake you up as soon as dinner's ready.
Program. And I've tried several different cuts, some from the leg called the top round and the bottom round. And from all the stews I've made, I find that I like chuck the best. So these are...
Well, you know, there's a first time for everything.
Right.
So the good news is that the acting will just get better, but we did some acting, and don't skip through the video because the play acting has been
Blended in
throughout the video. So if you thought you saw Tonya and I and that was the full act, there's Act 2, there's an Act 3. So we brought a classic celebrity chef out of retirement, didn't we, Tonya?
Yeah.
You've already seen the first few minutes of the cooking show with Julia Child. She's really an excellent chef because she teaches as she cooks. You learn a lot of technique. And even though I thought of myself as a pretty good home cook, over the last 3 months making these videos, I've been watching quite a bit of Julia Child. And I kind of think that my cooking technique has improved. So you could do a lot worse than have Julia Child as your teacher. So Julia's making some beef bourguignon, and that's what we're gonna make right along with her. So we're going to just show you a couple of our steps, and we're going to blend those steps into the video with Julia. She's going to be doing the talking, she's going to be doing the teaching, showing the technique. We're just going to see if we can do it. But the one thing I will say about our beef bourguignon is that we've updated it for the 21st century. Julia's recipe is very classic, and it's kind of an all-day, maybe even a 2-day process. 3 to 4 hours in the oven, there's a lot of prep time. What I've decided to do is to make a classic beef bourguignon with all of the classic ingredients that you'll see that Julia uses, but we're going to do it here in the crock pot. I think it's going to take us about 3 to 4 hours in the crock pot, and I'm excited to get it done. So with that, welcome to the Quarantine Kitchen season finale. It's great to have you, and let's get cooking.
All right. You cut up the meat into pieces about like that. We're going to serve this for 6 people, so we want to have 3 pounds of meat. I usually count on 1 pound of boneless meat for 2 to 3 people. But now we want to get our pan hot, and we're going to saute it in this first until it's brown, and then we're going to put it in this pot into which we're going to cook it in the oven. If you don't have the meat dry, you can't brown it because it's as though it were steaming. There's water on the bottom of the meat, and it just steams rather than browns. So you get it good and dry like that. Then we're going to saute this in oil. I usually use a light olive oil, which I get at my supermarket. And we need just enough oil to keep the bottom of the pan nicely filled with oil, and then you can add any more whenever you need to. This will take about 4 or 5 minutes to brown. And I'm not going to crowd the pan either. That's another extremely important thing, because if the pan gets crowded, then the meat steams again. As soon as all of it's covered with a little bit of the oil in the pan, then it doesn't stick anymore. I'm going to put a little bit more oil in. You can't really give proportions to this because you just add the oil as you need it. See, that's beginning to brown. You want to get it brown on all sides. And if your heat gets too much, you can just turn it down. I'm keeping it up on very high at this moment. So while you're watching me do this, remember you could do lamb or veal or chicken. Coq au vin is just the same as Boeuf Bourguignon. Bourguignon means Burgundy, and that's where this dish was invented, in Burgundy, and they usually use Burgundy wine with it. But you can use any kind of nice red wine, as you see. There, that's just about browned enough. Now we'll put this, as it's browned, into the casserole. I'm going to heat up that casserole a bit. That's just, see, that didn't take very long, only about, 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay, we are back in the quarantine kitchen and we are going to brown our meat. So what I've done is I had a little over a kilo of rump steak that we bought this morning from the butcher. I didn't pat it dry the way Julia did. What I did instead was I floured it. The flour is going to help it brown, number one.
And it's going to thicken the gravy.
And when we put it into the crock pot, exactly. And that was a great tip that you gave me.
And this is, according to the butcher, from the arse of the cow, yeah?
Yeah, I asked him what...
what part of the body it comes from, and he said the arse.
We didn't know it was rump steak. He told us that later. I said, where... I tried to say in German, like, what part of the cow... Cow in German is Kuh. What part of the Kuh is this from? And he said, the Arsch.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, okay. So, our pan's not big enough for all of it, so we're going to just cook what we've got. We're not looking to cook this through. This is just to brown it. The cooking is going to take place in the crock pot, so this is just to give it some nice color. I've got the pan on as high of a heat as possible, double checking that. Yep, it's at 9.
Now we have in here this nice sort of brown bit here that's left over from the browning. And this is part of your treasure of cooking. It's called a glaze, and we're going to deglaze it with our red wine. We're going to use about 3 cups, or about 2/3 the bottle. And this is called deglazing, when you pour the wine in and you're scraping up all this lovely brown coagulated juice, which gives color to your sauce as well as has a lot of flavor in it. Now we just pour that in, and then we're going to add some beef stock to it. We want just enough liquid so that the meat is barely covered. It's called à fleur in French, which means the meat looks like little flowers. That's just about 2 cups of stock in there.
Okay, so we're back. I've browned all of the beef, and I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. The kitchen smells fabulous. What were you just saying about some of this red meat, Tonya? You're not a big fan normally, but...
But I haven't had like roast beef in many months. Probably over a year.
Yeah. So we are now going to deglaze the pan. So I've taken some of the fat out. We don't want the sauce. This is going to be the base. We don't want the sauce to be fatty. So we're going to deglaze the pan. I'm going to use the full bottle of red wine because I know that the red wine is going to cook down. It's going to cook down in the crock pot. So there's no heat on the pan, but the pan is still hot from browning the beef, and all of those beef juices and those little crusties stuck to the pan.
And how does Julia say that?
She says these are the treasures of cooking. What I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna take the deglazed pans, juices, and red wine. I'm gonna put them into the crock pot. I'm gonna put the meat there. I've got 2 cups of beef broth. I'm gonna put the beef broth in there. I've got a tablespoon of tomato paste. I've got 2 bay leaves, a teaspoon of coarse black pepper, not fine, coarse black pepper. I've got 2
Cloves of garlic.
Cloves of garlic, yeah. She called for 1, but I like it a little extra garlic. So this is where you add your own flair. We've got some sea salt. Maybe I'm gonna put half a teaspoon of sea salt, and then I've got some thyme. I'm gonna put a teaspoon of thyme, and then I'll check back in a couple of hours. I'm gonna put all of this in here. On top of that, because we're not going to be doing all of these steps, I have about a dozen little small potatoes. I've cleaned them. I'm gonna put those in the wine with the meat, and those are gonna slow cook. And I'm gonna peel. I've got about a dozen shallots here. So in a few minutes, I'm gonna peel the shallots, and the shallots are gonna go in there. So about a dozen small potatoes, a dozen shallots, the meat.
And you're gonna saute the mushrooms too, or you put them in?
The mushrooms, because I don't want the mushrooms to cook down in here into nothing. I'm going to wait till it's done, and then I'm going to saute the mushrooms at the end and add the freshly sauteed
Good
mushrooms.
plan. Good plan.
I think that's a great plan.
Good plan.
We've not cooked this before. This is all off the cuff, right? We've been thinking about it, but really haven't tried this before. I'm going to try to put this on medium, and I'm going to hope at medium it'll be ready in about 3 hours.
Well, I know Julia calls this beef bourguignon and that it's a French dish and it's la la fufu, but this is basically a beef stew, which I've made many, many times in my life. But we'll see.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll see how
So I'm excited.
Okay.
Now, while that's coming to the boil, we're going to add the rest of our flavorings here. We're going to put in a little bit of tomato paste, about a tablespoon, about like that. And then we're going to put in some bay leaf, thyme, this is first, about half a teaspoonful. And then a bay leaf. Then, because this is a bourguignon, we have garlic. So here's a garlic press. You just put the whole garlic in there and go, Urgh! That's awfully easy, then you don't get it over your hands. And now, our stew is just coming to the simmer here. We want to give it a little taste to see whether we've got enough salt in it. You want to be very careful not to over salt at this point because the sauce is going to reduce. Doesn't taste good now at all because the wine is raw. It needs just a little bit of salt. I'll put in, about a half teaspoon there. And now that's at the simmer, and I'm going to put it in the oven. Now this is going to go in a 325 oven, and it should cook very, very slowly, just at the bare simmer. And once it's in, except for checking the oven to make sure that it isn't bubbling and boiling, you don't have to look at it anymore. Beef takes about 3 to 4 hours to cook, depending on the cut and the tenderness. Lamb takes about 2 hours, and chicken only 30 minutes. And they're all done the same way. And now, while that's cooking, we're going to do the braised onions that go with this.
I thought medium, but we have low and high. Because we cooked it on high, it's cooked a lot faster than some of the recipes I read said. Some of the recipes said 4, 5, 6 hours. One recipe that said 9 hours. So we checked the meat at 3 hours. Crock-pot's been turned down to low just to kind of hold it. If we had more time where we were going to cook this before we went to work and cook it all day, we'd definitely cook it low. So now what we're going to do is we're going to saute the mushrooms before we add everything together. If you remember in Julia's part of the video, she said to kind of wait till the butter, the foaming has died down, which it has. So this is on maximum heat. There's oil in here, about a tablespoon of olive oil and about 2 tablespoons of butter. And I think it's ready to go. So I've quartered the mushrooms. These were, I don't know, about a dozen mushrooms. So we're gonna let those saute. We'll give them a pinch of salt. We don't have to salt them too much because they're going into the stew, where the gravy is already a little bit salty from the beef broth and the salt we added. We'll put a little bit of pepper. I've got a pinch, half a pinch and a smidge, whatever that comes out to be.
Shall we take a look at the...
Yeah, let's see what it's looking like in there.
Well, it just looks pretty dark. But,
It's
but it looks good and it smells really good.
So what we're gonna do, after the mushrooms are done, I'm gonna put the mushrooms in a bowl. I'm gonna take the meat, the potatoes, and the shallots out. And then I'm going to strain all the bay leaves out of it, and maybe there's some fiber, make it as smooth as possible. And then I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of flour to probably about 1 tablespoon of butter. And we're gonna make this
Paste.
this butter flour paste, yeah.
And that's how you're going to thicken your gravy.
Yep, I'm gonna thicken the gravy with the butter and the flour. I'll put everything back into the crock pot.
With the mushrooms.
With the mushrooms and everything else, yeah. And then
Okay.
it'll be ready to serve at that point. By then, I'm roasting some carrots with just some salt, pepper, and thyme. And hopefully those carrots will be done by the time this is all ready.
Sounds
so,
good.
We are in the home stretch.
Ahead of time, and they're done when they're soft. But as you see, they've kept their shape. This is the way you always saute mushrooms if they're to be sauteed. But first I want to show you about washing them because that's important too. Now, we've got these. Here are 2 mushrooms. These are both fresh ones, but this one is a little bit fresher than that one, and you can tell because the stem is attached to the cap like that. This one is still fresh. If it were not fresh at all, the cap would have spread way out, but it still has that nice curl, so you know it is fresh. And now for cutting them, we in this stew, we don't want sliced mushrooms, we want quartered mushrooms. If they're sliced, they disappear a little bit too much. So to quarter them, you just take the cap and do like that. And then we want the stem to look like the cap, so that we just cut it on the bias like that. There, now our mushrooms are all ready. And we're going to saute them, but they aren't actually sauteed in butter, they're sauteed in butter and oil. Because if you use just butter, your butter's going to burn, and the mushrooms will taste awful because burned butter doesn't taste well. So the oil fortifies the butter a little bit, in other words, it is able to heat up a little hotter. Now we have to wait until the butter is hot enough, and you can always tell how hot it is by looking at the butter foam. So that's a very easy way of telling. And when it's foaming up like this, it means that it isn't hot enough. And as soon as the foam begins to subside, the butter is hot, and you can then saute. So it always takes a little while. You just have to be patient and wait. See, it's still foaming, so you just still have to wait. But if you try to saute something in butter that isn't hot enough, it just isn't, they aren't going to brown. So you have to be a little bit patient if you want success. Now that butter's hot enough, the foam has gone down, so in go the mushrooms. I think I'll have room for them all. Yep, I do. Well, almost. Yep. Well, I'll let them sit for a while over good hot heat. Then what's nice about this pan, you can just shake them like that. And that takes about 2 or 3 minutes. We'll just let them sit for a minute and then keep shaking them. If you wanted to saute them until they were cooked through, would take about 5 or 6 minutes. And this, we're just sauteing them a little bit so that they'll take on flavor. There. Those are just very, very lightly brown. And we can now set them aside. Now this stew is one that I've had in the oven for about 3 hours. And now comes the very important and not difficult thing about making the sauce. And what we're going to do here is just to, the easiest way to degrease the sauce and to give it its final flavoring is just to pour the whole thing into a saucepan, which we'll do here. I always find a towel awfully useful to have hung around me. There. Then I'll let the sauce drain out, and then we simply put the stew back into the casserole. There. Now we should have about 2.5 to 3 cups of sauce here, which we do just about. And what we do now is the final flavoring of it. We also want to take off any fat which has accumulated. If you made this a day or two ahead of time, you could put it all in the icebox and then the fat would come up the surface and you scrape it off. But in this case, we're just going to skim it off the top. Unless you're on one of those fat-free diets, you want to leave a little bit in because it gives a very good flavor. Now we're going to taste it. And it should be just exactly right at this point. Or if it isn't, we're going to make it, so. Well, that's very good. I think it needs a little more salt, and it needs some pepper. You don't usually put the pepper into a sauce until just at the end, because pepper sometimes can get a little bit bitter. So this hasn't had any, so this is the pepper going in now. Now I'll just taste it again to be sure. Always remember to taste things because you can spend quite a bit of time and then forget to taste and find that it isn't just right. If you felt that it didn't have enough garlic, you could put some in now. Or you could put in a little more tomato paste or a little more thyme. In this case, we fortunately find it's just right. Now for the thickening of it. And this is a very simple French thickening called a beurre manier, or a butter and flour paste. We have about 3 cups of sauce here, so we want 1 tablespoon of flour per cup of sauce, and that'll give it just enough thickening. And we just put the flour into anything handy, like a little bowl, and then have softened butter. About it. Like that. And then we work the butter and the flour together. And it makes what is called a paste, and it's a very quick thickening. It's not what you call a haute cuisine thickening, but it's what you always use for a stew like this. It's very typical of either the Boeuf Bourguignon or the coq au vin. There, now that's in the paste. And we're going to take the sauce off the simmer. We'll put it on a burner which isn't going, and just put this flour paste in and beat it up. These wire whips are awfully useful. And then we put it over heat again. We want it to bring to the boil. And it just needs to boil for about a second. And while that's coming to the boil, we put our braised onions in and our sauteed mushrooms. Now that's boiled, and you can see it's thick. What we wanted to do is just to be thick enough to enrobe the beef. And then, there we are.
And we are in the home stretch, Tonya. So I have removed all of the meat, the potatoes, and the shallots from this dish, and I've put them over there with the mushrooms that I just finished sauteing. Then I took a wire mesh strainer and I strained all of the particles
Bits and
out.
pieces?
All of the bits and pieces I wanted. And then I made the Bren Marnier, or what is that called? Or I don't know, whatever Julia called it, the butter and flour. This is 3 tablespoons of flour and 1 tablespoon of softened butter. It kind of like comes out into a cookie. It's like a cookie dough.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna put this into the crock pot. Let me get rid of this bowl.
And you need your wire whisk.
I am, yeah. I'm gonna turn heat up to high.
I forgot here.
Heat goes up to high. What do I
Here's a
got?
bay leaf
Oh
that
yeah,
you
that's
left in there.
that's one of those treasures of cooking, but not a used one. Okay, so then I'm gonna give with the wire whisk. Give it a nice stir so all of that butter and flour dissolves. And then, okay, so it's nice and smooth. I'm gonna give it one more taste. Not with clean the spoon so you can really get an idea what it tastes like. And then we're gonna make our final adjustment for seasoning right here. Oh, that's quite good. I'm very pleased with that. I'm gonna go with it the way that it is. I think it's fantastic. I'm gonna cover it to bring up the heat because if this was a proper gravy, we would be bringing it to a boil. I don't know that this is gonna boil, right?
No, it won't, but
Right.
it'll thicken.
Right, so we're gonna give the sauce, what, about 5 or 10 minutes
Yeah.
to thicken up. It's back on high.
Check your carrots.
And the carrots,
Okay.
now the carrots.
So you want to heat it up just a little bit, because you want the flavor of the onions and the beef to all blend themselves with the stew. And simmer it very slowly for about 2 or 3 minutes until everything was tender and hot through. But it's just a lovely stew. It's a peasant dish, and peasants don't do simple, hearty cooking, and that's just what this is. Well, now this is ready to serve right now. This is going to be a very nice dinner that we have. We have our Boeuf Bourguignon, and we have what the French usually always serve with it, which are boiled potatoes with parsley on them, and a very nice green salad of romaine, and as always, the usual French bread. You're going to see French bread on all these meals because the French always have bread at all of them. And also, we have a red wine. This is the same wine that we use for the cooking. It's a domestic mountain red. It's a very nice wine. Or if you have lots of money, you can buy a fine Burgundy, except with a beef stew like this, you don't use one of the terribly expensive Burgundies. You use a young, full-bodied wine, because if you had a very old, delicate wine, the stew being very robust would kill the wine. This took 2 or 3 hours. Chicken takes only about 30 minutes. And you remember now how to saute mushrooms, get the butter hot. Remember how the foam is supposed to look. And don't crowd the pan. Don't crowd the pan either when you're making a beef, when you're sauteing beef, or you won't get it brown. This is Julia Child. Welcome to the French Chef, and see you next time. Bon appetit.
Accessories and furniture courtesy of Design Research. This has been a WGBH videotape production.
Honey, is there something burning?
Yeah, that was dinner. I guess it's time to wake up now.
Oh, wow. I had the weirdest dream.
I can't wait to hear.
Wham bam, mon chasse place, j'ai sur mon lit à bouffer sa langue en buvant trop mon whisky. Quant à moi, peu dormi, vie débris, mais j'ai dû dormir dans la gouttière où j'ai eu un flash. En 4 couleurs. Allez hop, un matin, une louloute est venue chez moi pour poupée de cellophane, cheveux chinois, un sparadrap, une gueule de bois, a bu ma bière dans un grand verre en caoutchouc, comme un indien dans son igloo. Ça plane pour moi, ça plane pour moi, ça plane pour moi, moi, ça plane pour moi. Ça plane pour moi. Allez hop, la nana, quel panard, quelle vibration de s'envoyer sur paillasson, limé, ruiné, vidé, comblé. You are the king of the divan, qu'elle me dit en passant. I am the king of the divan. Ça plane pour moi. Ça plane pour moi. Ça plane pour moi. Moi. Ça plane pour moi. Ça plane pour moi. Allez hop, t'occupe, t'inquiète, touche pas ma planète. It's not today que le ciel me tombera sur la tête et que la colle me manquera.